Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Writing the Rapids, the show where I, Joe Bielecki, talk to writers about writing. Very often, they've been recommended to me by people who have previously been on the show, or it's a Rejoinder episode, and they themselves have previously been on the show. We are once again joined by John Trefry, who runs Inside the Castle, author of several books, including Massive, which we are talking about today once again. Before we get into my conversation with John, I'll remind you that you can become a patron over at patreon.com/noisemakerjoe. For just $2 a month, you get these episodes a little bit earlier than everybody else. You can toss me a tip, a one-time donation over at paypal.me/noisemakerjoe. You can buy my book. It's called Tired, and it's pretty good. If supporting with cold hard cash is not your thing for whatever reason, make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this right now. Leave a comment, the biggest emoji you can think of, just drop that right in the comments. That helps the algorithm too. And then just tell a friend about it, post about it, write about it, blog about it, writing the rapids on a playing card and leave it at a coffee shop or something. All of those things, I'm sure, would be very helpful. Now, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with John. So we are back talking about Massive. You were on a while ago. Was it last year or 2023 that you came on prior to the book being released?
I don't know.
It doesn't. I suppose it doesn't matter.
I mean, the very first time I was on here, I was writing the book too. So, and that was a lot of years ago.
And read an excerpt from the book
yes.
on the podcast. So I've been haunted by this book for a long time, which I feel like I said the last Rejoinder about Massive. And I was really excited to kind of put this book to bed. And then I went onto the website for Inside the Castle, and I saw that Correo has a companion destructing Massive book slated for next year, which means I'm going to unfortunately have to read that book, and then I can be done with then I can be done with Massive. But I've found this book and our on tape relationship to be a challenge, a formative experience, and a profound learning experience, because it has pushed me and pulled me in ways that I find like uncomfortable in the way that like trying to do a bench press at a heavier weight is uncomfortable. So as I was like, doing the interview in my head prior to us actually talking right now, as I normally do, I was like, what caveats? I feel like I could spend 30 minutes doing caveats, but that's the whole episode. So let's not just do that. But like, what are the caveats going to be? Do I need to give them? And I was reading and I was taking all these notes. And last night, as I was reading, just as my head was starting to hurt, which is my body telling me I need to stop reading Massive and read a different book, something clicked in my brain, and I was like, oh, I think I got it. I think I understand how to read this book. One of the things that was helping me get through the book was a short Goodreads exchange between two people, where one person was talking about, she was trying to read the book and she was stuck on the formatting, as I think a lot of people will be. You have the 3 columns, but they smear together. In the last episode, we talked about the formatting quite a lot. And another guy responded saying that, you kind of have to have Google at the ready to go down some rabbit holes and try reading it out loud and understand that this is taking place in a sort of dystopic Soviet realm. And so all that was helping me at least not worry so much as I was reading the pages. And I was finding things that were exciting. Like, yes, sometimes a passage will smear from one column to the other. Sometimes it will be on the left column and the right column with something else in the middle. It's not always the same. The font changes, which I think I know what that is. And as I was just about ready to put it down last night, I was like, okay, yes. Within each font is a different voice or different character or textual representation, because sometimes it's bold, sometimes it's a different font, sometimes it's underlined. But there's like 6 distinct ones that I think I can find. They're all their own distinct character, and there is like a narrative or a monologue or a stream of consciousness running through, jumping around, flowing through the columns, and the other stuff is the sort of like dystopic noise, like lists of films, architectural things. But like if you're looking for something close to a narrative, it is there, and it is being kind of like purposefully obscured by this sort of noise that is happening. How am I doing, John? Am I at all close?
Oh yeah, I mean that's, I don't know about obscured, but I mean it is obscured. I guess the purpose was to have the reading experience be, you always hear about like non-linear narrative. This is meant to be non-linear reading or non-lineated reading. So I found at some point, maybe 20 years ago or something, that when I was reading, I wouldn't be able to just stay on a line continuously. My eye would bounce around the page, and I'd look at like, sometimes I'd see a few spaces between words on different lines lining up to create like a negative space on the page, or a certain word would pop out to me and my eye would bounce down there. So what I was trying to do was, I guess, capitalize on what I already felt like my reading kind of form of attention was, and write something that would, I guess, represent that to other people, so that their reading experience would be analogous to that, and that it was kind of inescapable. I have seen like, I did write all of the what you would call narrative pieces in like continuous chunks that are like, I guess they make sense, but they were written in with the idea that they do make sense, and that they are telling a story about these people living in this country and in this town. And I kind of am sad that it doesn't, it can't be read like that. And I did put all of it, like made it available online. And there were people who are like, I've looked at some Reddit things about it that are like, I can't believe he did that. That's silly. Why would you share that stuff? And I shared it because I liked it, and I knew that it was not possible to really pull it together in that same way by reading the actual book. I don't think it's a cop out to like show my work or whatever. I think we're at a point where, in the 20th century, like even Ulysses, like Joyce dropped the hints of what all the chapter titles are, even though they're not in the book. That's what helps people understand the relationship to the Odyssey. I don't think that's a cop out. I think it's just like a way of giving people a deeper understanding of what the book's intentions are. And I think it also had some like the formatting that you're talking about. It had a reading focus, but it also had a conceptual focus of the idea that the book is not depicting a sequence of events in order, and the idea that everything in the book is happening at once. Like when you close the book and you're looking at a closed book, It's all right there. It's not it. The pages are in order in most cases, but everything that you're looking at and the solid thing is all happening right there at once. So I was trying to write something that both in terms of the way it was written and then the way it was read was something that had no like causality, like linear causality.
Yeah. It makes me so it makes me so happy that I was kind of on it. But I guess it also makes me happy whenever I interact with ergodic writing that is not immediately apparent. The Spectre of House of Leaves returns. House of Leaves, the formatting makes sense, almost too much sense, where I remember reading it and wanting to throw the book down and scream, okay, I get it. It's like the house. The words on the page are like how the house is. I get it. Because like in one hand I hold, that's so annoying. And in the other hand I hold, oh, I love that. That's so fun. And understanding that House of Leaves is just a creepypasta internet horror story is like the perfect way to approach it. But I'm always kind of worried that that kind of stuff will either be that annoyingly apparent or a sort of like belligerent weirdness. And that's I suppose there's value in that, certainly. One of the things about being a David Lynch fan and largely hanging out with normies in college is that I would get a lot of people saying, oh, you like Twin Peaks? You should watch this show. It's weird too. And like whatever is weird about the show invariably has nothing to do with why I like Twin Peaks or Eraserhead or Blue Velvet or whatever. It's like, oh, this is just weird. And there's this fear I have with experimental indie lit where I feel I'm always afraid that the book I'm going to read is going to be weird on purpose. Weird because the prose isn't very good, so let's just throw the text everywhere and add some spooky images and cut things up, and that will like raise the mystique or something. And for whatever reason that scares me. Somebody can psychoanalyze that. But
does that scare you because you're afraid that you won't be able to tell the difference between something that does it successfully and something that's just doing it for the hell of it?
Probably that's what it is.
I feel that way as an editor, like trying to parse through the submissions that I get that are like, just fucking around with the ones that seem like they're taking the detours that they're on very seriously and with a purpose.
Yeah. And because like a lot of time, I think the conclusion that I've kind of come to is that it's not that I like don't have context for a lot of this stuff. For like, it's not that I don't have context for Inside the Castle books. It's that Inside the Castle books are generally doing something very new. Or that if there is context, I largely do have it. And I get this sense because when I finally learned the word ergodic at the same time as everybody else on the internet, I started looking through YouTube and Instagram and Wikipedia and stuff for other examples. And what I find, especially on YouTube, is that either through sheer laziness or lack of examples, that it's really the same 6 books that people are mentioning. They're mentioning Hopscotch and House of Leaves and LMNOP and the one with the words laser cut out and the one where the length of the words are like a looping Fibonacci sequence and the one where the letter E isn't used. And there's like 6 examples. And I honestly, through sheer lack of research. Don't know if that's because that's what there is, or if there is more, and people just aren't finding it. I mean, with Cloak and Apocalypse Party and Inside the Castle and I'm sure other indie presses, like there now are lots of examples. And even within Inside the Castle, you're doing something different than what Douglas Lumen is doing, which is different from what Correo's doing, which is different from what Meyerhofer's doing, which is different from what MJ Gett does. And everybody's kind of carving their own paths out. So to even kind of try to mash them together into one thing is difficult, I find, aside from the sort of very glib, oh, it doesn't look like a book how you would expect a book to look on the inside of it.
I have tried, I mean, you're saying how different we all are, and I think that I'm probably, I think I've said this before, probably the more conservative of the characters, in that I do want to just write text. Mm-hmm. And this book I wrote this summer does have images in it, but it's not the same way as like a Kitchell book where the images are like graphically related to the text and like become kind of inseparable from it. But when you talk about that catalog of stuff that's like claimed to be ergodic, it seems like the one that stood out to me was Hopscotch, because yes, you do read it out of order, but he kind of tells you what the order is, and you can read it your own way, but it's built into it, like what the structure of it is. So it's unconventional, but I don't know that it's a book where you have to figure out how to read it.
Yeah.
Like I think of something like Correo's Smut Maker, which is just like, the words aren't even facing the same way on the page, and they're arranged around these graphic stage set things, and they don't exist on lines with each other. To me, that's a book, and similarly with Massive, that you have to figure out how you want to use it. And you said kind of early on, like, you had this epiphany where you're like, I know how it's supposed to be read with Massive. And I wanted to say that maybe the right answer is, I know how I'm supposed to read it. Because I don't even know how it's supposed to be read. And that was one of the things that was exciting about publishing, is that I would get to hear how other people would want to approach it. And I think generally it's similar to how, like, when I sit down to read it, I end up doing. But I think there are people who are maybe being a little bit more methodical about it than I do, which is, because I wrote it all, I guess I know what it is already. But when I sit down to look at it, I just like open up to a page and just kind of start cruising around. But I think there are probably ways to slow down and like try to find a thread that passes through it, and or like go from page to page more quickly and look for like resonant things that seem to build up with each other into some bigger kind of suggestion. But I don't think there is a right way to read it, or even like an expectation of how it would be read. It just kind of is. So what you do is you find a way, if you have any interest in spending any time with it, you find a way to just kind of make it work for you.
Yeah. And I have run into picking up a lot of indie books, reading them, kind of being bewildered by them, going onto Goodreads and finding unexpectedly the one review that's like, y'all just need to vibe with this book. And to be sure, there plenty of these types of books I do just vibe with, and it largely has to do with the amount of time I either have or allow myself to have with a given book, right? Partially I'm on self-made deadlines for the show, so there's only so much time I can spend with a book. I also keep buying books. I buy more books than I read, and so my house is filling up, and so it's like, well, dang, I need to I kind of want to read a couple books this weekend just so I can take the pile down a little bit. And then of course there's the whole, every time I have somebody on here, they mention 3 writers who I've never heard of before. And so I got to go out and get their books so I can get the context for this. And, one, it is kind of nice to understand after all these years that, with the exception of Bataille or I don't know, some other French people, largely all these people who are coming on, especially the people who do the more experimental stuff, if you'll forgive me, are kind of coming at it from different areas and with different, so I don't feel completely out of the loop the way that I might have a couple of years ago, where it's everybody's read the same things, and it's no, everyone's read some Bataille, and everybody's read some Ballard, but it's probably fine. If I read somebody who's French, I'm gonna probably get some context for a lot of these people, but otherwise yeah. So one of the notes I took down is, I don't really know what's going on and I don't have the time to work it out, but it excites me. And then next to it, I wrote John Coltrane, because there's this wonderful video of some John Coltrane song that, if you like jazz, it sounds nice. It's a nice song. It's a cool, exciting jazz song. It's really hot jazz, not cool jazz. But it turns out that he's doing these really intricate key changes throughout the song. This cycle of key changes using certain chords to bridge the keys. And you can if you know to listen for it, you can hear the piano player as he's going to do his solo get tripped up by it, even though the song has been playing for a while, because how are you improvising over all this? So while that song I don't think you would classify as free jazz, but a lot of free jazz is kind of like that too, where I had a jazz history professor basically say free jazz is for people who either just like chaotic stuff or who know a lot about jazz, where you can hear something and know what he was doing, and that's what's rewarding to you. And that's kind of what I got to last night when I was reading Massive, where it kind of clicked for me. As a person who knows a little bit about literature and a little bit about writing and laying out books and stuff, where it's I see what he's doing. And it makes thematic sense. And that's what was that is what is satisfying to me about these types of works. And I very much value you guys are thinking too hard about it. You just got to vibe with it. Because that's essentially how I read poetry. And if I'm going to grab a book that's 100 pages from Cloak and half of what is on the pages is imagery, I'm just kind of treat it like poetry anyway, even if there's no line breaks. But it is nice to not even necessarily have a puzzle, right? Because we've kind of established that there is no correct way to do it. But it is nice to be able to see the sheet music as I'm listening to it,
I think that my perspective on what we're calling experimental literature, you said everyone's got kind of a different kind of context for it or different rationale for how they approach it. And I think, as I've said before, mine comes a lot from architecture and my background in that. And you're talking about like the casual listener to a jazz record versus like the expert like musicologist, and that it can work for both people. And I think that's what my hope is when I'm writing, is that there's a very clear way that it affects you that's like inescapable. Um, but then there's also a very, very deep and measured and intentional like granularity to what's in that mess, that like if you wanted to do what I was saying and just like flip from page to page and kind of cruise and just see what happens, that's the experience of like, let's say you go to like the Guggenheim in New York and you buy a ticket just because you seriously have to take a shit, and you just like ride the elevator to the top and go find a bathroom as fast as you can, and then you've got to meet somebody somewhere else. So your experience of that building, which is super rich, like about cosmology and space and all this stuff, it was for you, it was just about trying to find somewhere to take a dump, um, and you got it over with. I think that the same thing is possible with the kind of books that I want to write, where there's a casual kind of drive-by experience that you can have. But I think you could also, like you said, someone was saying about it, take like each word and try to understand its relationship to the broader context of the book. And like, I don't pick words just like willy-nilly. So if there's a word in there that's a really um, strange or like specific word, it's probably in there because it, you know, is trying to create its own little microcosm of meaning that you could dig down into. So I think that there's a way to spend time with it uh, superficially in a way that's much more in depth.
Yeah, one of the notes I took before I sort of had my little epiphany was that, like, even without the weird formatting, and you had sent me, and I guess it's public now, I didn't know that, but you had sent me, like, the Google Drive with individual text files. And I was looking through those again. I looked through them during the first Rejoinder, and I looked through them again, and, and I'm familiar with your writing, and, like, even without the weird formatting, you're not writing at like an 8th grade level, dude. Like, so like, it's kind of, it's hard to read in the first place. So I was kind of like wondering, and you answered this almost right away, but I was like, what is the formatting doing? And you explained it already. So I'm super stoked that you did.
Well, I wonder if this is just a question based on what you're saying about the individual components and the way they're constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that if they were written more conventionally, like with regular grammatic sentence structures and, the right verb tenses and whatever, if you took text that was like that and chunked it up into the kind of format that Massive is using, do you think it would feel less successful, or do you think that there's something about the more playful kind of text composition that doesn't really have like consistent sentence structure or grammar that allows it to be like blurred, as you said, together?
Yeah.
Do you think that makes it more easy to blur and less like clownish looking?
Like, I feel like if you had periods, it would feel more like a puzzle to be solved, I think, perhaps.
Okay.
Because you have lots of parentheticals.
Yes.
And I will use those to kind of help me get my bearings. So I'll see an open parenthetical here and a closed parenthetical down here. and I can like, it helps me segment the page.
What
And
about when there's like 6 parentheses in a row?
that's where I get, that's where my head starts to explode, because I'm like, oh no, do I need to go back? Because I know we talked about with Platts where like the pages are self-contained enough in a way that like you can read each section.
Mm-hmm.
And Massive doesn't feel like that, but I think simply to keep itself going, my brain is like, we're going to look at a page as its own unit, understanding that it is within context. And then when I see the 6 closed parentheticals, I go, oh no, there is a layer here I'm not considering, and I am however many pages into the book. So I either need to go back and try again, or I need to move forward with this new context, and or just say, oh, that's just John being silly, and I'm just gonna let him be silly there, and I'm gonna keep chugging through.
Well, I counted the parentheses. That I mean, they should work in terms of how the original text was nested together.
Yes, and I completely believe you. I think that is absolutely the case. And that's what is like almost horrifying for me as a reader, where it's like, oh man, oh no. One of the things I had considered, I've been slowly trying to annotate books more. I don't really like to do it. It feels bad and wrong, because I was raised Catholic or something. And but I've been doing it with poetry a little bit, especially with like stuff that my friends give me that I know I'm never going to give away, stuff that's like signed or whatever. Me annotating it is only going to increase the resale value in the event that both I and whoever else get famous. But I was thinking like, oh, what I should do with Massive someday is I should grab a bunch of different colors of highlighters, and I should start like highlighting the sections where I think they go together, or start with a pencil and like draw a border around a block of text as it moves across the page, so that I can kind of more easily read it as its own thing, and then look at what's surrounding it to see how that interacts with it. And I didn't do it in this case, but I think if somebody is listening to this and they're stuck on the book, that might be an interesting way of going about it too. But I also feel like we've given people like 5 or 6 different ways to go about reading the book based on their own like willingness to invest time. One of the things that I notice a lot, kind of as we're wrapping up here, I want to get your take on it. And this is partially about the book specifically, and I guess a more broad question. And that is the invoking of certain writers when we talk about stuff like this. Obviously, I mention House of Leaves all the time because that's kind of the like anchor point of my context, even though I've started reading Inside the Castle books before I read House of Leaves, which I think completely demystified that book for me, having read like Platts and a Kitchell book or two before reading House of Leaves, made House of Leaves like complete baby mode. But also like within those Goodreads reviews I mentioned earlier, people are bringing up Beckett, people are bringing up Joyce, and especially within Massive, like I don't know necessarily if any of those are good writers to mention. I saw some pushback on like Logan Berry's blurb on Garrett Strickland's scrims invoking Beckett. And so like I kind of want to know where you like how you feel when people are talking about your books, or Inside the Castle books, or just kind of this weird ecosystem more broadly, when they are bringing up those writers, what your feelings are, and maybe if you think people should be not doing that, or mentioning other writers, or just kind of your general mood about that.
Well, I was telling my class yesterday, my architecture theory class, that we were talking about like how a lot of buildings, like contemporary buildings, super contemporary, have like a vested interest in becoming like viral and like Instagrammable. And they were like, well, should that be like frowned upon, or like, is there something wrong with that? And I was just like, an architect has to do what they're going to do, and there's not like a value judgment that can be made about whether it looks right or wrong, or it's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, because there is no right or wrong way. And I told them that I had gotten to the point, and it's not helpful, I guess, as a teacher, where I just don't really care, like what, like as an architect or a writer, it doesn't matter to me if my intentions are right or wrong, or in the right lane, or whatever. As long as it exists, as long as it's been done, then I'm happy with it, because all I care about is making the work. So I don't really, it doesn't bother me. Like if I saw someone talking about Beckett, I'd be like, oh, holy shit, okay, that's great. Like, I mean, I've read him, of course, but I don't feel like it was a touchstone for this book for me. But if someone else thinks so, then that's cool. Like, I'm not sure what kind of reference I would find offensive, or, I mean, there's certainly good reviews. Good. There's not many good reviews about this book, but there's one that I think that's like, this sucks or whatever. It's like, okay, doesn't matter to me if you think that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, definitely James Joyce and Dante and Nabokov. Like, there's a group of writers that had like a kind of key role in like either appearing in this text, or helping like characterize how I wanted to approach it. And if someone were to latch on, and Mandelstam himself, obviously, if someone were to latch onto those things, then that's cool. I guess you are kind of getting a window into what I was thinking. But if you also say, this really reminds me of Dean Koontz or whatever, like, that's cool. I would want to talk about that some more, because I don't think that literature, like when it's really successful, should have like a pat like meaning, like you solve the problem and okay, now I can move on to the next thing. I think if it's something that the writer is wanting to be enduring in some way, then it shouldn't have like a simple answer, or a singular kind of equivalent.